name is Jill Wright. I've been quilting for, gosh, probably close to 40 years, I guess. Started in the 80s, and I just started to make quilts for the beds, and it just kind of evolved into a, hobby, and then can't remember the word, sorry.
No, you're good, you're good. Okay.
Compulsion, that's what it is. My grandma used to make quilts all the time. She would take leftover fabric from sewing projects and make just scrap quilts, and she and Grandpa would tie them all winter long. And so I kind of watched that way, and I played underneath quilts at my mom's once in a while. Mom didn't do a lot of quilting, but she did a little bit. And then I just decided it sounded like fun, so I started taking classes and just kind of evolved from there.
That's cool. And how long have you lived in Montpelier?
About 67 and a half years.
So I guess it's fair to say you like it. You like it in Montpelier.
I do. I went to school for a year and a half, and that's the only time I haven't lived here. Mm-hmm. So.
Wow.
It's just home. One of them called Garden Maze is a Ginny Beyer pattern and fabric that I got off of either Craftsy or Blueprint, whichever one it was at that time. And it's got some hand applique on it. Don't usually do things by hand. Just use the sewing machine, but that one was kind of a fun project to do. And then the other one is a pattern, a laundry basket quilts pattern. Her quilt was done in blues, and we just bought the pattern and thought, we'll get our fabric someplace else. So we got it, and we got it down in Logan, and my husband picked out the colors, and because we didn't use the blues, we just renamed it, and he called it the Golden Aspens. And so it's got trees that have gold and trees that have red, so there's a few maple trees in it. And that one is just one that I did because he picked the fabric out. And so, and then the other one, I can't even remember the name of the pattern because it's been hanging for so long, waiting to be quilted. But it's got barns and chickens, and so I just named it Barns and Hens because I don't know the name of the pattern. But we did it. It was a sew along. We did it at Quilt Guild lots of years ago. I don't even remember how long ago it was. Well, there's a lot of aspens in Idaho and a few maples. So golden aspens would be because of the trees that grow here. The other one, the Golden Maze, just flowers, I guess. And the Barns and Hens, because there's barns and hens around here a lot. My neighbor has hens, chickens, so.
We had a project at Guild a few years back, and each one was a different theme, and you got to have a choice of 2 different things. Now, honestly, I don't remember both of them from each thing that I did, but the first one was Old Ephraim, the bear. Now, I'm a transplant, so I learn all this stuff living here. You know, I'm not from here. And so I already had this pattern, and I've sold a couple of these, just the bear. which is a lot of work. And but I thought this is perfect because I don't have to find something. And then what I did was I just see we had a choice. We had to do Butch Cassidy, so that was a given type thing. And then we had to do a choice of something and whatever livestock they had. Well, me, I'm going to do the livestock because I don't know, I'm a transplant. So I did the cows and the pigs and the sheep and the horse for one of them. Then we had, I did the, this is Big Hill, where the wagons came over here. And then this is actually Clover Creek, where they camped over here. And then I just had the animal, and then I had a wagon. I wanted to do a wagon. And then the animals that are around the area, cougars and coyotes and moose and eagles, you know, that kind of thing. And then we had to have something from the lake, so I have the, it doesn't look like it, but it's the, what do you call it, the lake monster that they have, kind of like Loch Ness, only it's here. And then I did a corner up here with a boat. And that's how I came up with all this. And these are just, you know, from down in town. I printed these out and just put them on there for Butch Cassidy, because I guess he's a big deal around here. So, but I mean, that was what I did, and I didn't get it done the first year that we were supposed to have it done, but I did get it done the next year. So, anyway.
My name is Bethany Perkins. I haven't lived in Preston very long. My husband and I came here 6 years ago from Twin Falls. Our grandkids and daughter and her husband live in Montpelier, so we wanted to get closer. And I've been quilting probably since the mid-90s. I started doing wool applique around then. It was just starting to come out when me and a girlfriend started, and this was one of the projects that I done. This quilt is called Creatures of the Night, and it's an old pattern. It was done all in cottons, and it was appliqued with cotton fabric, and I wanted to do it in wool, so this took me 3 years to do. It's all hand appliqued. Some of the wool come from thrift stores, like my skunk. That was, I think that was a skirt. The beaver was a coat, and so was the raccoon. And so I tried to pick up fabrics from the thrift store, wool, and yeah. So it's all hand appliqued. It took me a long time to get it done. And it's on a flannel background. Well, for the most part, other than the possum, we have most all of these birds in Idaho. And if you look at the detail on the side, we have frogs, we have butterflies, we even have snakes over there. And I think there's crickets and bumblebees. So yeah, I just love the outdoors. I'm a very outdoor person and love the wildlife in this area, and so that's why I wanted to do it. No, if you ought to try doing some wool quilts, they're a lot of fun. They're very rewarding, definitely heirlooms. It's time consuming, but it's well worth it.
My name is Darlene Jolly. I was born and raised right here in Franklin County. I had to leave the county to find a husband so that I didn't marry somebody I was related to. And my wonderful husband's name is Dallin Jolly. We lived in Utah and American Fork for the first 9 years of our marriage. And then we decided we really, really needed to go someplace more rural, more family friendly than where we were. And we ended up back here in Franklin County. And we love it. We really enjoy the slower paced lifestyle and the, just the agricultural aspect of everything, just knowing where you come from. So that's how we are Idahoans. The quilt, we started our little quilt guild. We had a challenge. It was a photo challenge, and we were supposed to take any photo and use it as inspiration. It didn't have to be an exact reproduction. It was just the inspiration for our quilt. And I had already taken this picture. The picture is right off my front porch, and it is the morning sky. And I just, when they had this when they came up with the photo challenge, I knew that somehow I wanted to do that photo. And so, just because I love the seasons, I love nature, I love the colors of nature. And so I knew immediately which photo I was going to use. A lot of the other ladies in our guild struggled with that. Oh, I don't know what photo I'm going to use. And it could be any. It could be out of a magazine. It could be one of your own, whatever. And so I thought, oh, I know what one I'm going to use. So, but I kind of called it Idaho Morning. And I even called it that before this. So this is our mornings in Idaho. This is what we get to wake up to. So not every day, but usually something is beautiful. So anyway, I love quilting. I'm probably not the most aggressive of quilters, but I enjoy the process, and it's just a fun outlet for creativity and just to relax. So yeah, the first one is the one that I call Bob's Cabin, just because I used fabric that my mother had given me, and I feel like somebody had been planning or had done something with these fabrics, because it came with the yardage of the cabins and the deer, and then it had a few of these solids with it, and they just coordinated, so I felt like they had to have been planning something or had done something. And I added a few more colors to it and just kind of made up the quilt as I went along. So that's how that one came to be. And it's just called Bob's Cabin in honor of my mother's husband, and they had a cabin in Island Park. So
what can you tell me about this quilt?
what I can tell you is I have nothing to do with this quilt. It's Kathy Thomas's quilt, but nothing is more indicative of Southeast Idaho than Napoleon Dynamite. And this is Kathy's locker quilt that is in the Preston High School, and it's just so cute, and just she designed it, obviously, and I'm pretty sure she made it. And I might be spreading rumors, but I heard that Jared Hess wanted to buy the quilt, but Kathy didn't want to sell it. So anyway, there's Napoleon Dynamite's locker. I don't know which one is his though.
Jill Barber, and I'm originally from Butte, Montana, with the copper mines, and now I live in Aramo, Idaho.
Nice. And when did you start quilting?
In high school, my mom had a treadle sewing machine, and I did my first quilt then, and she had an old wool blanket, and that was the batting for my first quilt. And it was tied.
Oh, that's awesome. So would you tell us about this first quilt?
This one is, the block is called Idaho Beauty. It has many names: Crossing the Plains, Cornerstone, Botch Handle. And a botch handle is the little tool that lifts the lid on the old cast iron coal and wood stoves. Devil's Claw is a very aggressive vine that grows back east that people hate, and that's another name of it. So I kind of prefer Idaho Beauty or Botch Handle.
Do you know why it's called Idaho Beauty?
No, I don't. I haven't been able to find that. But
Cool though.
I like the name. We live in Idaho. Here we go.
I know, I'm like, that's perfect. So did you hand quilt this?
No, I sew all my piecing with antique sewing machines that are hand cranks or treadles, and I do all the quilting with a treadle sewing machine. So this is a quilt that I designed for the raffle quilt for our quilt guild in Pocatello. I'm in 3 quilt guilds. Can't have enough of that, you know. And it was during the celebration of the Lewis and Clark centennial, I think it was. And so Moda came out with Lewis and Clark fabric, which is what we used. And I think there were 14 people that helped sew this quilt. It was a group quilt. And then once we got it done, they couldn't stand to raffle it. So here it is. We have the teepees, because Lewis and Clark met all the different tribes. The buffalo, which was essential for the Plains Indians. And these are some of the flora that they took notes of, discovered. This star is called the right hand of friendship. Well, they were giving the peace medals to the tribes that they met and said, we want to be friends. Yes, and then this one I didn't quilt. We had a lady quilt it. This pattern is called McTavishing. It's very nice background color. And these symbolize the mountains that they crossed and the rivers that they forded. A lot of symbolism in it.
I live in Pocatello. I did live in Immigration Canyon for 25 years and moved away and then came back to Pocatello, and I love to quilt. So, and I am retired, so I get to quilt a lot, and so I enjoy it a lot. Mm-hmm. My Nana taught me how to sew by hand when I was 9. And so I think I've been sewing ever since, mostly when I was younger, clothing construction, and then high school probably brought my first quilt, and then life and children and jobs and family stuff. I didn't quilt a lot then, and then but upon retirement I've started really delving into it a lot in the last maybe 15-20 years. This quilt is called a crumb quilt because it uses crumbs, little tiny pieces of fabric that people don't think are big enough to use in any other semblance of a organized quilt. So people call these scraps or crumbs, and they, for the most part, these are things that friends give me and because they're going to throw them away and because they're not good for anything. And then I take them and I collect them and then I sew them all together to make fabric. and it's called a crumb quilt. And I envision what our pioneers used to do when they didn't have, everything was precious. And so you can throw all these little bits of things together and sew them together and make fabric, which is, I think, visually stimulating. I love it. People, especially through the Oregon Trail, everything they needed, and didn't discard things just because it wasn't, big enough or whatever. Yeah, you need this. You need everything is salvageable. Everything can be upcycled into something else or refurbished into something else. You can take, fabric or clothing and say maybe it doesn't fit the person anymore, it doesn't work anymore for that purpose, but it still has life repurposed as something else. And that's what this is something that nobody else wanted and was going to throw away, and I've made a quilt that will keep you warm out of it. So yeah, and I envision that the pioneers probably had to do that.
Okay, Sharon Berg. Let's see. I started quilting, 2008 for the first time, and one granddaughter wanted me to make her a quilt. Okay. And then another, and I made one for each of my kids, and and it just grew. Well, next year it'll be 50 years that we've lived here. Oh, well, he loved everything with the outdoors. He liked camping, floating the river, fishing. For a while we had horses, and he'd use them, go up into the mountains, and I don't know what all he did, because I didn't go with him. So the quilt just depicts some of the things he liked doing.
And that was for your husband?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they said that he was sick, or?
Yeah, he got sick, and his kidneys were starting to shut down, and it came sooner than we thought it ever would. And
But he saw it before he left. So.
yeah,
Really cool.
well, this is just, he's gone fishing.
Yeah.
My name is Diane Olson. I have lived in Soda Springs for 32 years, and I am an artist. I teach art from my home. That's kind of what my job is. I got into quilting about 10 years ago. I joined the club. I have done some quilts before then, but they have really taught me a lot about it. So this one I made a few years ago, so it wasn't really for this show, but when you said what reminds you of Idaho, I figured this one would work because this is a windmill pattern, and we have a lot of windmill farms around this area, and we have the most beautiful fall, autumn season, and these colors kind of remind me of that, and so that's why I picked this quilt to be in the show. All right, this quilt is made from fabric I got from a friend when she died from COVID. Her family contacted me and was trying to, clean out the stuff. This was, a while later, but when I saw this, I thought, oh, this would be a good quilt for the quilt show, just because we have a lot of horses around here. It's very western. This quilt I did quilt by hand, so I pieced it all and then I quilted it by hand. So and around all the little horses and the clouds. So it did take me quite a while to do. But I like how it has kind of a wheat in it and a pine cone. It just, everything reminds me of Idaho.
My name's Sandy Martin. I've lived in Soda Springs for 18 years. How we got here was we retired and moved from Colorado, where we were both born and raised and worked and raised our families. And then we retired to 40 acres in Nebraska for 10 years and decided we didn't want to spend the rest of our life with barbed wire fence as much as we liked the living there. The weather was tornadoes sometimes and humidity, and so we just did like the pioneers. We packed up everything and sold some stuff, put the rest of it in storage, and got a pickup and a U-Haul trailer, and we came west. Not knowing where we were going to live next, we just kind of knew that we wanted to kind of come back to the mountains. So while I was living in Nebraska, I met a friend. She became a friend, and she's the one that taught me how to get into quilt. And so since I was retired, I had time to start quilting, and I didn't know a lot, and I watched videos, and we came and decided that Soda Springs was the place for us. It just seemed and felt right. So we spent a couple of years fixing our house up, and then I went to a fall sale, craft sale, in the fall after we'd been here about 3 years or so, and it was the Quilt Guild. The lady that was selling stuff said, "Why don't you come to the Quilt Guild if you like to quilt?" And so I went to a meeting, and that was in 2010, and here I am. Now I'm president of the Quilt Guild. So the way this quilt came about, and the Quilt Guild is just a wonderful gathering of very talented people. So one of our quilt members found this pattern, and she and another member went to Pocatello and bought the fabric, and that was in 2012. And then unexpectedly in December of that year, Brenda passed away. And Barbara, who was shopping with her, knew that she had this quilt planned. And so when her husband gave us the quilt things that she had left over, we took this quilt in 2012, the fabric and the pattern, and we all worked on it together, and we called it Carrying Hearts of Love. And so it's just, a part of me is, I'm happy I moved to Idaho because I found wonderful friends and caring and kind people, and this is a joint effort. Even though I made some of it, I didn't make all of it, but that makes me happy because it's all of us in this quilt. And that's the neat thing about a quilt guild, is just you find people that you like and you have fun together, and that's the story.
My name is Ashley Greer. I grew up over in Grace. I live on a dairy farm with my husband, and I have 2 stepkids that come up. And I work for a quilt company that designs and makes applique quilts. And this is my first large design that I've done and quilted myself. So, yeah. So quilting I started probably about 3 years ago, and it started with, I'm creating these designs, I should probably learn how to actually do the quilting work. So I jumped in with both feet and started, and haven't looked back since. I did start sewing when I was young in 4-H. My grandma taught me, and great grandmas on both sides quilted and sewed, but my mom has never been a big quilter. She sews wonderfully. She's a fantastic seamstress, but quilting was not her jam, so I didn't get that as much until, I got older and then realized that I do love it. So So this is the byproduct of many versions of this quilt. I first started with just a basic camper with a lawn chair and a little cactus by it because I'm obsessed with cacti. I love decorating, I love cacti. And after we had done 9 different versions of this camper with a cactus and a cat chair, one of my coworkers said, well, if you're making this many versions, why don't you make a block of the month and have a camper for each month of the year? And that's where I started. And then I actually started working on this when I moved back to Idaho with my husband, and this is the first project that I designed in my house back here in Idaho. So it's very near and dear to my heart that way, because I'm finally back where I want to be in Idaho.
Cool. So you designed this quilt?
Yes. So this is my pattern. I have a design name and I have other designs, but yeah, this is the first one that I have actually finished from start to end. I didn't have anyone else. Well, not on other designs I've done, I had help. And this one is actually also special to me because the ladies in my ward helped me hand quilt it. So it is hand quilted as well. So it's great.
Yeah, wow. So how does this kind of say Idaho to you?
Mainly just that it's my first one that I designed when I was back home, and it feels like home to me. And I feel like Idaho is very much known for camping and outdoors, and it just resonates with me that way.
I'm Melissa Thompson, and I was raised in Cache Valley, Utah, and I got married and we live here in Soda Springs, Idaho. My parents are from Driggs and Victor, Idaho, and my husband's family is here from Soda. I first started sewing at the age of 8, was when I took my mom's sewing machine and just started monkeying with it. She told me that I had to learn the real proper way, and so I went and spent a couple weeks at my grandma's house in Victor, Idaho, and my grandma taught me some of the basics on how to sew. Then I tinkered a little bit more through high school, not too much sewing. And then I got more involved after I graduated, and I've always had a dream of actually having a quilt shop and a quilting business and fabric business, and I've just barely recently made that happen. But I do love sewing, and I learned from my grandmother, which this quilt right here was actually made by my grandmother, Donna Murdoch Thompson. And we kind of think that she made this about 1955 or 56, close to when her first 2 children were born. And when I asked her for it years and years ago, she told me, oh no, heavens no, it's not beautiful enough. But I didn't care because I just wanted something fun that my grandma had made. This quilt right here was made by my husband's 4th great grandmother, Louisa Medford, and she was from here in the Soda Springs area, actually Chesterfield area. And so we believe this quilt was made close to 1930s, and this has actually been in a cedar chest for the last 2 generations. It's never been used or touched. And when I came along, I asked my husband's grandmother if I could have it and hang it on my wall at my house because I loved sewing so much. And she said, of course, as long as I promise to take care of it. So this one is 4 generations old for my husband and 5 generations old for my kids. So I love it. I think it's awesome. These quilts right here I've made recently, just for fun. And this quilt right here with the eagle on it, this quilt was made in 2014, and it was given to my oldest boy when he became an Eagle Scout when he was 14 years old in 2016. So
and it has a lot of custom quilting on it and some pine trees and the eagles and whatnot. So that's a little bit about me. So I would say they represent Idaho to me. This one's pretty easy because we got the pine trees and the bald eagles, and we all live in the mountain area. And to me, Idaho represents, you know, the mountains and the wildlife and the animals. These quilts right here, I would say represent Idaho because they were both made in Idaho. I'm sure with this quilt being 5 generations old, I can only imagine that it's all used from great-great-great-grandma Medford's clothing and her dresses and whatnot, and I'm sure some of that clothing traveled long distances to make it to Idaho for them to survive with. So I'm sure this has a lot more detail and a lot more story to it than I know, probably than I'll ever know. And I would say this quilt was made by my grandmother when she was very first getting married in 1955, 55-ish, 54, 55, and she again came from poor circumstances and situations, and so they used everything they had. And they didn't have fabric shops, so it wasn't like you could just go downtown and get whatever you want. So then these quilts were also all made in Idaho. Everything I've ever done or sewn has been in Idaho, so I just, you know, think that the fun colors and stuff why not bring out the fun sunshine that we don't get very long in the summertime. So that's how I think it ties back to Idaho.
Great. Well, anything else you'd like to add, or?
No, I think what you guys are doing is wonderful, so it's a great idea. Have a big quilt show representing Idaho.
Okay, I'm Bonita Howard, go by Bonnie. Lived here in Malad since 1966 on a farm. We'd milk cows. We still do a few cows. I've probably been quilting, maybe 10 or 15 years. But the quilt that you're going to see is made by my grandmother, my great aunt, and my great-grandmother back in the 1930s, and it's hand sewn together, so it is an heirloom to me. They lived in the Buell and Jerome areas in Idaho, and we're farmers, and so it's part of Idaho to me. That's where they lived. All I had was the top, and I wanted to preserve it. And so I talked to different quilters, and they said that it would be best to have it machine quilted. And so I had it machine quilted and then bound it, so will be preserved, other than just having the top.
Yes, the United Quilters, which is our local quilting club, has, I don't know, as many as 30 members. And they decided, they often, for different organizations, they'll quilt a quilt and donate it to be raffled off or auctioned off as a fundraiser. So when we were just starting with the Welsh Festival, we had no money. And they put together this quilt, which we did auction off. Now, at the end of it, some people got together who wanted to keep it in Malad. So made a big enough donation that it was able to stay with the Welsh Festival so that we can display it every year. Well, there's a Welsh dragon. The Welsh dragon, the red and green Welsh dragon is on the flag, which is up in that corner, the way it's symbolized on the flag, not with the yellow outline, but That's the Welsh dragon. So it's a red dragon. And the story is that, the legend is long, long ago, that the red dragon fought the white dragon. The red dragon symbolized Wales, the white dragon symbolized England. And they fought to a draw, and they both withdrew. And the legend is that when the red dragon rises again, Wales will overcome England. We'll see if that happens. But yeah, the red dragon is their big symbol. And of course, some of it has US things on it too, like this one that has the Welsh flag and the US flag, because the Welsh settled Malad Valley. Most of the earliest pioneers were from Wales. So the names in the valley are Williams, Evans, Jones, Thomas, Price, Davis, lots of Welsh names. Now it's changing because Malad is changing, but those are if you go to the cemetery, those are all the names. Lots of sheep in Malad, not to make sheep Malad, lots of sheep in Wales, more sheep than there are people. So when you drive, you see flocks of sheep everywhere, and flocks of sheep are crossing the roads and everything like that. Apples. Apples grow well in Wales. I'm not sure what variety or anything like that, but that's probably the only fruit that grows really well because of it being so far north. Daffodil is a symbol of Wales. And so on St. David's Day, everybody wears a daffodil or a leek. The word is the same in Welsh of leek, which is a form of onion, and daffodil. And so I think people would rather wear a daffodil than an onion. Here's a little cabin house with a thatch roof, lots of thatch roof. Little homes are still in Wales. Most of them now are not lived in year round, but during the season of sheep herding and stuff. This is a bridge and a creek in Wales with a castle in the background that you see a lot of castles and old-time bridges throughout the country. I think this is probably a symbol of a daffodil also, and another dragon. Then that's the Welsh cross. Then there's one that's just the red and greens are so important. Now the little girl, the little doll with a hat on, that also is very symbolic of Wales. The story again is told, and I think this one is in the 1800s, so it's a little more recent, that the Welsh were in a battle against the English, as they often were. And of course they didn't have the numbers that the English had. So the women dressed up with these hats to make themselves look from a distance like men, and intimidated the English to the point where they quit. They quit the fight. So that you see a lot of dolls, and on holidays you see women wearing those. They're made out of felt, and they kind of look like a stovepipe hat as their costume, native costume. There's a castle. There would be, as I say, there are lots of castles. Most of them built by the English against the Welsh. So they're nice to visit. So the quilt, we're very proud of it. There's a lot of Celtic designs in the quilt that are not just Welsh, but any of the Celtic nations use those same kind of interwoven designs on crosses, on jewelry, on quilts. Again, another apple tree. While the Welsh settled in Malad Valley, of course, and they soon spread throughout southeastern Idaho. So if you run into a Jones, a Williams, an Evans, a Thomas, Price, Pierce, any of those names, you know that they probably started in Malad and then spread out. And the Malad Valley Welsh Festival salutes all of those early pioneers and the pioneer heritage. The purpose of the festival is to preserve and celebrate the Welsh heritage of the area. And so it's always the last weekend in June. and everyone's invited whether you're Welsh or not.
Where do we begin? I guess.
I'll let her do the talking.
Well, we were married in 1975 in Logan. No, in Salt Lake, actually, weren't we? I was going to Utah State. Curtis was also. And I actually went to Salt Lake to teach school for a year, and then we moved back to Logan. We came to Richmond, built a home in 1978. So we've been here in Richmond ever since then. Curtis is originally from Lewiston. And in 78 we built a new home here, and then we moved in 2004 to this home. We built it in 2004. Curtis worked at Bridgerland Applied Technology College, and he was over the building construction program, building trades. And I taught home economics, family and consumer science. I actually taught a year in Salt Lake, and then I taught for 13 years at Westside, and actually went for 2 years at Bear Lake High School. Raised all of our family here, and been in Richmond since 1978. Well, sewing's probably been a part of my life. I did 4-H as a young child, actually even on a treadle sewing machine. Our teacher had to run the machine, and we kind of guided the fabric. And then teaching family consumer science and home ec, been involved with sewing all of my life. Graduated from Utah State with a degree in home economics education. And didn't really get into quilting, although I had done quilts tied for my children, and grandchildren, but not until I retired 5 years ago. And then asked the question that everyone does, now what am I going to do with my life now that I'm retired? And so I had a friend that was involved in the Needles and Friends Quilt Guild in Hyde Park and joined them. And also I'm with the Preston Piecers in Preston now. So that's just enjoying being creative and doing the fun different things. It's called the Lone Star Quilt, and it was made by Curtis's grandmother and given to his mother. So his grandmother's name was Savella Mansfield Palmer. She was born in Samaria, Samaria, Idaho, and met Dave Palmer somehow. I don't know for sure that story, but he was from Preston, correct?
Croydon.
Oh yeah, he was born in Croydon. But they lived in Preston. Children were born there and raised there. Clyda, Curtis's mother, was the oldest child. She was born in 27. Did I just write that down? And then she married Curtis's father, Lavore Price Dent, in 1949 in November. And this was the quilt that Savella Mansfield Palmer made as their wedding gift. And I don't know for sure how we inherited it, other than probably nobody really cared about it when they passed away. And so I got it, and we have it. So we were talking to Curtis's brother yesterday, and he says, I remember a lot of diapers being changed on that quilt. So they used them, it was what they had. And he remembers it being on his parents' bed, and it was used.
Hey, I'm Brenda Daniels, and I'm from Malad. I grew up, was born and raised here. I've lived here all my life, and I live about 1.25 miles from where I grew up. And we farmed and ranched until a few years ago, and then when I retired, I started making quilts. So when Emma came and they wanted some quilts to display, I thought, what would be good, what would tell a story about the county. And so in the county we have what's called the Legend of the Iron Door, and the freight wagons and the stages used to run through here, and some robbers took an iron door from a vault and they put it in a entryway of a cave, and they used that as their hideout, and then they would rob the stages and the wagons and get the gold. And in their last robbery, they were all shot up, and they got back to the cave, and the one realized that they needed some help or they weren't going to survive. And so he left his 2 companions in the cave and came down to the valley to get some help. Unfortunately, he did get to a farmhouse, but he did not live long enough to let them know where to get back. And so the legend is that they have all this gold stored behind this iron door up in the caves in the Samaria Mountains. And people have claimed to have run across it. They've left coats, tied sheep, and gone to get other people. And when they've come back, they have not been able to find it. So apparently the iron door's still there somewhere. So that's what inspired me to make this quilt. And then we also have a little theater that is named the Iron Door Playhouse, and I thought it would be a good raffle item when we're done to give to them to raffle off. So I drew the pattern, I enlarged it, had it enlarged so that it was the size that the panel needed to be, and then I just kind of started putting together pieces of fabric that I thought would go in and would make it look like the iron door and the rocks, and I laid them down, and then I appliqued them on, and then it needed a border, and so I thought, well, I found mountains, and these look similar to the Samaria Mountains where the iron door would be located. And then I just found colors that I thought would go with it. I had the story, just a short story of the iron door printed up and put it on there so that people could read and know why I chose to do the iron door. And then that's it. I just quilted it, and there it is.
Yeah. So, and maybe this is a weird question, but how do you feel like this kind of represents your community or Malad?
Because it's one of the legends. I mean, every community has a legend or has a story, has something that happened there. And we have a lot of businesses that use the iron door in their name, and anybody from Malad will recognize the iron door. So it's kind of, it's just something that's part of our culture here. So I'm glad to have this opportunity to make me do something that was new to me. So.
What's not to love about Idaho? The secret is out, but no one knows. All of the heartbreak from years ago. Don't forget